me now, David Barton, Rabbi Daniel Lapin, Reverend James Robison, and Dave Roever. Before we get all to the happy talk about how everything great and hopeful it is, would you all agree with me that we are facing powerful evil that we haven't seen in the world, do you think, ever?
Not in our generation.
Yeah, not in our generation. I mean, when, back in the 30s, I think people fought it and saw it, but it's
worse than 1980 when we finally recognized together that we had a very serious threat to freedom. And we recognized an enemy on the outside. And it brought us together a little bit like the day after 9/11 when we came together. But we really came to our senses. Right now we have an enemy that's committed to destroying everything we believe.
Freedom on the entire planet.
Yeah. But we have an enemy within. Yeah. We have forsaken the founding principles. We have forsaken the truth. The enemy is within. We take lightly the truth. We take lightly the Judeo-Christian principles upon which our nation is built.
How do you see? We've always had enemies without before, but we had a common set of core values that we relied on. But now we got all the progressive nonsense, in addition to all the Islamic extremism, and we got to fight inside and outside. We've never had to do that before.
Well, here's perhaps just a start of the hope and the good news, which is that yes, we are facing fierce fanatics and frenzied fiends bent on our destruction.
I think we're facing more. I think we are actually facing, I feel it, a force of evil. There's something too good. Who is it? Was anybody at 828 down in Washington? Yeah. You felt that good, didn't you? You felt that good. So there is something when you gather people, it compounds on itself.
Isaiah said your countenance testifies against you. You can look at the countenance of people who are walking with their fist in the face of God. And by the way, His grace allows you to live with your fist in His face, but you're going to pay the consequences of those terrible decisions. And so this is what we see right now, and that is an open rebellion against truth and against the Word and the will of God. And it is going to lead to catastrophic.
We feel hopeless sometimes. The task seems immense. And I think part of the hope is that as ancient Jewish wisdom teaches, when it came time for Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, amazingly enough, only 20% of the Jews followed him out. 20%, that's ancient Jewish wisdom. It's reliable. That means the entire basis of civilization in the world that came down from God to Moses on Mount Sinai came to only 20% who were willing to step forward, willing to say, I don't mind feeling like a rhinoceros in a petting zoo. I'm willing to stand out and be different.
About the same number. American Revolution, just about 25%. Only about 25% of Americans supported the Patriot cause. You had about 25% who were on the other side, and about 50% who were just ambivalent and see which way it falls. So it was, again, a minority. 20%.
Small number of us.
And 25%. That's exactly right.
We have to be committed.
Yes.
25.
Yeah. Let me address the conspiracy. You talk about conspiracy. The great conspiracy you refer to in one of
I read about it in the New York Times.
In one of your books that you, I hope everybody's read, Overton and Wendy, you have one of your key spokespersons talking about the real power is the principalities and powers in the heavenly realm. That is the real conspiracy. That is the powers of deception. Now, we're going to have to bring a kingdom of light to bear on that, a kingdom of truth. And that means people are going to have to stand up. We can no longer sit under that covering and hide that light anymore. Now is the time for us to come together, Glenn, and here's the key. And I'm going to say this very emphatically to everyone. Listen, you might as well borrow your camera for a moment. The only hope America has is for people who truly understand the absolute importance of faith, of family, of freedom, which in my opinion includes a healthy free market that is not greed-driven, greed-controlled, greed-vulnerable, because it works. It's going to include that group coming together who really value it. That's why we can appreciate, and by the way, it's only in this country that Islamic people who are not radical extremists want to do it, and might even have the right to worship freedom, because they are destroyed by their own overseas in the Middle East. And it's here that we have the greatest freedom. So we're talking about faith, but it is the Judeo-Christian principle that was the rock-solid foundation that was so solid and unshakable, and atheists signed off on it, and two deists signed off on it, and they stood on solid ground. And we've been building on that foundation. We have forsaken it. If we don't return to that foundation, I really believe we're in more trouble than we can describe.
Can I quote Ronald Reagan? I wrote this down, and I think it'd be appropriate right now. This is Reagan's statement. Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. This is going back to our original beliefs, finding what we were built on that let us outlast any other democracy in all the human race. No government has lasted as long as we have. And as a result, we go back to where we started. We can continue in the future. And one other thing, too, you guys can do this better than me, but there's some statement somewhere that I've heard over and over that about 20% of the church pays for 80% of the church who don't pay to come, and 80% of the church are there. I hate to use the language that went with that statement, but they're feeding off of the. You only have two of them as men and a woman, and they're feeding off of them, and everybody else is paying for their. You know what I'm saying when I go back to this? I hope that didn't confuse you, but when I go back to this, I'm saying it's that percentage that don't cave. It's the percentage that are sitting in the studio that are involved enough to show up at a Beck event here. It's these kind of people around the world in the churches that of that 20-25%, that's what's going to make the difference. Right? And I'm in the most powerful minority on the face of the earth. And I tell you, if someone said it was called a silent majority, well, I'm not silent. I can tell you right now, I will speak until there's not a word left to speak. I want to slide through the gates of pearl with my hair on fire and blisters on my feet because I went through hell to get there. I want 10 people to have to replace me. I do not want to sit around and do nothing while this country is struggling. And there's people just like us at this table. And I'm proud of my black robe thing, man, whatever you call it. I forgot what it was.
Just a second.